Biogas Association launched a community. It's a global community, open access. It's free access, and it's open not only for World Biogas Association paid members, because we are reaching out to global stakeholders. We're here to provide opportunities to connect, to learn from each other, and to achieve our goals and net zero. So we have an online platform. If you haven't joined that, I will send the link into the chat. Please do join that platform. You will see all our members. You can connect, ask questions. You will have access to videos and podcasts that we recorded. We launched in summer, so we are 6 months and we are 700 members so far. So these are the upcoming events. In January, we invited the leader from Indian company called Refex, Kalpesh Kumar. And in February, Mario Rosato is our guest speaker. We will be talking about how to improve the efficiency of technology and biogas plants. So make sure you join us online and join those platforms. And without any further ado, I hand over to Hilman, who is also Connect Plus, our community ambassador. Hilman, if you could introduce yourself, and then Tina. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Aya. So, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and wherever you are. So, thanks so much for this opportunity. I'm Hilman Dwi Putra from ACT Group. So, I'm based in Singapore right now. So, sitting in our Singapore office. So, it's now 5 p.m. In Singapore. So, nearing to like close out business day. And I'm a strategist for Asia Pacific. So basically, my role is like a business development. So I lead ACT's business development for biomethane related products across this region, from like Japan, China to Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. And previously, I also work and live in Netherlands, also in biomethane sector. And Tina, could you also please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tina Kopayan, and I'm the founder and principal of Whiteleaf Climate, a strategic advisory practice based here in Singapore.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, today's we're going to discuss and explore about lessons from the Chinese biomethane market, also with comparisons with what we can learn from Singapore as a like that wants to be like a biomethane hub in this region. So I will start with lessons from China, and I think Tina will then continue with like her view, also some insights from both China and Singapore. So I'll start sharing my screen. Mm, Give me 1 second. So I'm not very familiar with Zoom, so I need like some moment to share. Okay, I think my screen should be visible now, and I will show in full screen. Is it full screen already, right?
Yes, we can see
Yeah,
it.
okay,
Fantastic.
perfect. Okay, thank you. So let's start. So if you are not very familiar with ACT, so ACT is the leading global provider of market-based sustainability solutions. In the past, we were more well known as ACT Commodities, but since the last 1 to 2 years, we rebrand ourselves as ACT Group. We were founded in 2009 in Amsterdam. Started from the EU ETS markets, and since then we expand our portfolio and deliver tailor-made solutions for environmental products like carbon credits, renewable electricity, and renewable gases, so including biomethane and bioenergy. We've been very active in biomethane markets, especially in Europe and North America, for more than 10 years. And in 2024, we have like helped our clients to source 3+ terawatt-hour of biomethane globally. So we also work very closely with like industry groups and associations, like for example, World Biogas Association. Two of my colleagues in Amsterdam office also sit in WBA's member of councils, and our CSO is also a vice chairperson of AITA. And now we have like 500 colleagues globally. Our headquarters is in Amsterdam, and in Europe we also have offices in Paris and in London and Madrid. And in US we have two offices in New York and Miami to cover like both North American and Latin American markets. And here in APEC, Singapore is our like APEC headquarters for our operations, where I'm based. And we also have offices in both Tokyo and Shanghai for their respective country. And so let's talk about biomethane. So for this presentation, I will focus on biomethane, not biogas itself. So and maybe like I believe like all of us are very familiar with biogas, but maybe some of us are still like not very familiar like or like difference between biogas and biomethane, and why is it so important, for example, to upgrade biogas into biomethane. So as we know, right, so biogas is produced from organic materials like energy crops, agricultural residue or manure or wastewater, and like any waste from municipalities and landfills. And why is it so important to have biomethane? Because like once you have biogas, and but it still has like a maybe like around 30 to 50% of CO2. Well, like the rest is like methane gas and some other impurities. But then, like if we refine this gas and upgrade it into biomethane, or is it also called like renewable natural gas in North America, then we can have like a more like a pure methane gas, so more than 90 to 99% of methane gas, which is in the same quality as fossil natural gas. And like biomethane is also a drop-in fuel, so it means like we don't really need to, for example, retrofit or modify like the infrastructure that we already have for natural gas, which is very important to expedite the decarbonization of this sector, because like it means like we also need less capital to replace fossil natural gas with biomethane. And then the second point, the second reason that I want to point out is also circular economy, because you know, like biomethane can be used like in all the activities that basically natural gas is used in today's industries, like for electricity production or space heating, to transport fuels or shipping fuels and industrial feedstock for chemicals or petrochemicals, for example. And then it goes back, right? The electricity goes back to the industries, to commercial, to our homes and farmlands, all this, the heatings, also the fuels itself, like they go like, to all of these like sectors. And these activities produce waste, organic waste, and then like and then the cycle goes on and goes on, right? And produce biogas, biomethane, and then it goes back again. So now let's move on to our topic today. So China. So why China is like looking after biomethane? Why is it so important for China to like produce like or unlock their biomethane potential? So if you are not very aware, China is like world largest natural gas importer today. So they import like a huge amount of natural gas, either via pipelines. You can see on the right hand side that like there are like quite extensive gas pipeline networks within China itself, and also extend to the neighboring countries. They import natural gas via pipelines from, for example, Russia and Myanmar and some other countries. And they also import like a huge amount of LNG around from around the globe. So if you see from the diagram on the left, see like it's not because like China doesn't produce natural gas, because basically China produce also like quite a lot of natural gas, but just like the demand is huge. And like even like based on like a forecast, China may reach like up to 530 billion cubic meters of natural gas demand within the country by 2030. And when we talk about biomethane potential, because China is a huge country with a huge population, huge agriculture, like industries and the other related sectors, that based on like some reports, they estimate that China has the potential to produce around 150 billion cubic meter of biomethane, which is a bit like higher than the total amount of natural gas that they import from other countries. So it means like if China can really like unlock this like potential, they can really help like reduce their dependence to fulfill like their rising natural gas demand for 2030. And also it's like talking about infrastructure in China, right? Because China quite relies on natural gas in the country for like industries or like commercial or households. Then they have a quite extensive pipeline networks, which is like beneficial for biomethane sectors, because like it's also easier, like not easy but just like easier compared to other Asian countries to inject into the grid. So we'll discuss about this later. And talking about numbers, like in 2024, based on like some local reports, that China has around 7,000 biogas plants, not biomethane, and then like, but yeah, most of these plants are like a tiny scale, like from rural regions. When we talk about like large scales, not like 7,000, and when we see that there's also a rising or a growing activities to upgrade biogas into biomethane in recent years. So today, like China has around 100 to 130 plus active biomethane plants in the country. So if we and we go to the right side, so we see like the capacity, right? So the annual capacity of biomethane production in China has reached around 1 billion cubic meter. If we compare to Europe, for example, today Europe produce or like has a like a production capacity around 7 billion cubic meter a year. And China also has like a clear target for biomethane. They set like a 20 billion cubic meter of biomethane production by 2030. It's quite an ambitious target, and but like if we compare to Europe that also has a target of 35 billion cubic meter, then it's like a, I would say like a fair target to be put, considering China economic and population size as well. And so, why biomethane is growing rapidly in China, right? So, I think like we identify at least like four main drivers that we believe like is happening in China based on like the market feedback that we receive from our clients. So first, of course, like the national target and policy framework in the country. Second is the feedstock and infrastructure. Third one is financial incentive and capital subsidies. And then the last one is market-based mechanisms. I will not go into depth for the financial incentive capital subsidies, but let's discuss about the other three. Okay, now start with biomethane specific policy framework. There are like a couple of policy and regulations in China, but of course, like we won't explore like all of them in this webinar. So we will focus on like the most important or the main like a regulation, specific regulation for biomethane, which is like the guidelines on promoting the development of biomethane industry, set up in 2019 by the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, National Development Reform Commission, or NDRC, and National Energy Administration. What is the significance of this policy, right? So it has like three key components. First is to build a distributed renewable clean gas production and consumption system in the country. And then second is to realize the sustainable use of urban and rural, because China has like a quite a huge region, rural regions and also urban regions, and both produce different types of organic waste. but all of these organic waste can be utilized to produce biogas and biomethane. And then the third one is also to optimize the supply structure as an important supplement to conventional natural gas, something that we had discussed earlier, right? So to make up for the shortcomings of natural gas supply and demand in the future and to reduce import dependence. So actually, like they set up a goal of 10 billion cubic meter of biomethane production by 2025. And we know like today they produce like 10% of that, which is quite far off, but they are going into like I would say like a good direction to produce much more than this. And by 2030, they have like a target of 20 billion cubic meter of biomethane production. And second one about feedstock. So it's also quite unique for China because like most of the feedstock for biogas, not biomethane, because there's like a limited data for biomethane specific feedstock. And when we talk about biogas, then like most of them are produced from either manure or municipal solid waste or food waste and agri residue, and some are produced from sewage sludge. And why is this so potential? Because as we know, that China is still an agricultural society and also a manufacturing, like global manufacturing hub, right? And they also have a considerable cross production from you name it, like corn, rice, wheat, beans, and potato. And then based on like WBA report from the past, that it can potentially generate up to 50 billion cubic meter of biogas. And also China has a huge like industry for livestock like cows, pigs, and hens, and they can also generate manure that can potentially generate like even more than like 64 billion cubic meter of biogas. And combined with also like the amount of the size of the population and enormous like industrial sector that generates sewage sludge and food waste, then can see that like 20 billion cubic meter technically makes sense. But of course, there are a lot of challenges like economically, technically, and legal that should be like addressed to realize this potential. And move on to the third driver, which is a market-based mechanism for biomethane. Why is this important? Because like let's put something like this. Maybe in Europe and US, like the infrastructure is very well connected, right? So it means like when biomethane is produced somewhere in the country, usually in rural regions where the farm is located, can be injected into the grid, right? Because the grid, like the gas pipeline, is quite close to the location, and then it can be like the environmental attributes can be transferred to buyer like anywhere in the country or even like cross borders, as long as it's like physically interconnected to the pipeline. And Europe, it has been going very successfully, I would say, in US as well. And sometimes like like gas, like electricity, right? Sometimes like the demand is quite far away from where the supply is located, and when there is no one like willing to buy biomethane close to your biomethane plant's location, then probably it's going to be difficult to set up like a good business models for your projects, for example. So like market-based mechanisms for biomethane and also renewable energy in general is very important because it can really like incentivize uh, like the supply and demand, whichever like the potential locations are, and wherever they are, and also like to help like match like the supply and demand, because sometimes like the clients, like the end buyers, have a very specific requirements for what kind of biomethane they would like to buy, right? And probably it's located quite far away. So if there is no like a schemes that can really support the transfer of these green attributes of biomethane, it's going to be difficult for these companies. And if there is like market-based mechanisms, really like supports this like arrangement. So in China, like in the last 2 3 years, there have been like setting up like two local voluntary schemes. The first one is called ZCC, or Zero Carbon Energy Certification. And then the second one is China Green Gas Certificate, or CGG. So for ZCC, it's a voluntary zero carbon certification platform by BEIPA. It's like a bioenergy association in China for non-electric renewable energy. So not specific for biomethane, but including biomethane and renewable heat. And also it can be used as a proof of renewable energy production and consumption through certificates. And it's been, I think it was introduced last year in 2024. And for China Green Gas, it's also a voluntary certification and a trading platform for biomethane specifically. So this is only like for biomethane developed by the Green Gas New Energy. And the difference is like it has a quantifiable like green attributes per energy unit, means like it also has a like a calculation for the GHG intensity of biomethane production, while ZCC is only shows like the like a it's produced from renewable source or renewable supply, for example. And on top of this, like two local voluntary schemes, we also have an ICC, which I think like most of are quite familiar of. ICC is originally from Europe. It's like ICC exists to verify like a compliance with the EU legal requirements for like GHG savings criteria for renewable fuels, including biomethane. Now it's called ICC EU because ICC North also has ICC Plus that extends to include other bio-based and renewable materials beyond the EU boundaries, right? And why ICC certification is growing in China, because like you know some of these companies in China are international companies, and also like Chinese companies that are operating like outside of China, and they are influenced or impacted by the EU regulations. They also look for like a like EU recognized certification scheme for their biomethane consumption. So that's why like now like in the last 2 3 years there are a growing number of ISCC certified biomethane plants in China to help like fulfill or meet like this demand and requirements from these international organizations. So it's not like a utopia. So there are like a lot of like challenges to address to scale biomethane in this country. First one is also access to gas pipeline injection. Even though like the gas pipeline is quite extended, it's not as extensive as in Europe, I would say. So there are a lot of like things need to be addressed. First is like the location sometimes are not really like close to the gas pipelines. And then second one, even if they're close, then the grid injection costs can still be an issue for biomethane producers, right? So I think like we think that China like needs like more clarity and support on the regulations to provide like ease of access for pilot injection for like biomethane projects, since like it can also help like the decarbonization effort of the country. And also for example like clarity about like the cost and permits and etc etc. Then second is lack of operation subsidies like feed-in tariffs or feed-in premium. We know like in Europe like some of the EU member states have these schemes, like, but in China they don't. So it means like if projects are going, they need to have like a long-term offtake certainty to improve their bankability, so that investors are willing to invest their money into the projects. And it's not very easy, I would say, to find like a long-term off-takers for like a niche product like biomethane, right? So I think like feed-in tariffs and feed-in premium could really help like improve the rapid growth of biomethane in the country, because normally biomethane production costs can be more expensive than natural gas price. especially when China is importing natural gas from other countries. And then the last one is a lack of official market scheme. We just discussed, right, that China has its like local schemes for biomethane, but it's not official. All of them are voluntary schemes for biomethane certifications and trading platform. And it means like there's a lack of long-term certainty, right, regarding like which scheme to register. For example, if you'd like to build a biomethane plant in China, then you probably like need to decide like, so which one I need to register, and then considering like where which scheme can like still exist like for long term, for example, or like any other reason that you like to have. So we believe that the Chinese government in general should also like set up like their official biomethane scheme with a clear recognition for the national methane emission reporting to improve like the market liquidity. It's not doesn't have to be like a new I would say like a new registry. Can also, for example, like partner with the like an existing voluntary schemes and like make it official, but also something that needs to be discussed by the relevant stakeholders. Okay, I think that's all from my presentation today. So I'm Hilman. I'm a PEC Biomethane strategist, and then we also have like colleagues in China, Shadu and Dinwei. So feel free to reach out to us if you have like further questions and very specific questions about biomethane market in China. Thank you.
Over to you. Great.
All right. Aya, can you confirm that you can see my slides?
Yes, thank you very much. We can see it.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Yeah, so again, good morning and good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining me for today's presentation. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Tina Popayan, and I'm the founder and principal of Wildleaf Climate. And today I'm going to share perspectives on biomethane in Asia. And we're going to look at two distinct models. So Singapore as a hub and China as a scale market, and what this means for the region's energy transition. Just a little bit about my company. We are a strategic advisory practice focused on energy transition policy shaping, industrial decarbonization, and geopolitical risks. Our org spans policy analysis, stakeholder engagement, scenario planning, and crisis management, and we are based in Singapore. I think Hilman has absolutely covered some of this here, but I think it's interesting just to set the scene why biomethane matters in APAC and why now. So I think Hilman rightfully points out, yes, it's a drop-in replacement for natural gas because chemically it's identical, so it can flow through existing pipelines and power plants. And therefore, it has immediate decarbonization potential because we can reduce emissions without waiting for new infrastructure. But I think what's very specific to APAC is that it can strengthen energy security and diversification using local feedstocks and reduce import dependence, which is obviously at the top of mind for most governments around the world right now. But for APAC eventually will become an energy import region, even though it is currently exporting oil products, oil and LNG. But according to the latest IEA World Energy Outlook, around 2040, APAC will become an energy importer. So APAC's gas demand is rising, and biomethane offers a scalable, low-carbon options without the capital-intensive build-out that's required for hydrogen and electrification, which we know other governments and other project developers and other industry associations are also looking at. But I think biomethane just plays a very specific role in APAC's energy independence and net zero pathway. If you look at what Singapore is doing, Singapore is positioning itself as a policy sandbox and regional gateway. 95% of Singapore's power comes from natural gas, so biomethane integration is very straightforward. We also know that Singapore is piloting imports and certification frameworks and is positioning itself as a hub for regional trade, right? Connecting producers in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia with buyers across Asia. And this is also where players like ACT comes in and plays a significant role. So Singapore's role is not just domestic, it's about anchoring a trusted ecosystem for cross-border biomethane flows. Now, China, by comparison, is a domestic feedstock story. So I'm not going to go into the details because I think Hilma did an amazing job covering that. But we do know from external resources and research that the market is already worth almost 1 billion US dollars this year in 2024 and is projected to reach 1.8 billion by 2030. So the technical potential is vast. And Hilma also talked about feedstocks, right? He mentioned municipal waste, crop residue, manure. I think you name it, and China has it and probably has it in abundance. But here's the challenge. The regulations that currently exist are not conducive to scaling biomethane. So scaling is where we are today to the 2030 targets, to the vast potential that people think exists in China for 2030 and beyond 2040. Because current frameworks, they lack clear certification standards, grid access rules, consistent incentives, right? China is a huge country, obviously, and policies remain fragmented across provinces, and permitting is slow. So without harmonizing regulations and without policy innovation, China's scale potential risks staying underutilized. So now that we have two models, a hub model versus a scale model, does that mean that we're looking at two different pathways? Not in my opinion. I believe that we're looking at two models, but one transition. I believe that Singapore and China are not competing models, but they're actually complementary. So what does that mean? China brings imports, ecosystem readiness, and regulatory agility because it can quickly integrate biomethane into existing gas systems and it can set the rules for trusted trade, which can act as a blueprint for the rest of the region. In comparison, China brings domestic feedstock, skill potential, and still evolving regulation. But China has the volume and the resources to supply the region, and it needs policy alignment to unlock that skill. So I believe if you look at Singapore and China, and if you look at a hub and a skill model, together they can form a backbone of a regional biomethane ecosystem. But to connect hub and skill, we need policy alignment. We also need a lot of different things. We probably need commercial innovation. We need operational, hurdles being resolved. But I think from my perspective as a public policy person, policy alignment is a key issue that will needs to be addressed. And when I look at what are some of the specific policy asks for APAC, we also don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Because there are very effective policy frameworks that exist in other regions elsewhere in the world that we can learn from. So a key policy tool is harmonizing certification standard, because without common standards, biomethane cannot move seamlessly across borders. So harmonizing certification standards will enable trusted biomethane trade. It's also very important that we recognize the carbon benefits of biomethane and an emission reduction potential. And you do that through implementing fiscal incentives or blending mandate or carbon pricing. This will ensure that biomethane can compete fairly with fossil gas and that emission reductions will be fairly rewarded, which will then influence the commercial structures. Environmental attributes, certificates, and regional protocols will need to be developed so that they can enable cross-border trade. Because robust certificates provide transparency and credibility, and that makes biomethane tradable like renewable electricity has been for a long time. Hilmar mentioned gas pipelines and infrastructure, and clearly open ecosystem access for third-party injection and transport will be very important. And there should be policies around that as well, because producers need fair access to pipelines and terminals to reach buyers. We briefly mentioned feedstock. We should mobilize feedstock through circular economy and waste to energy programs because unlocking waste streams is critical to scaling supply sustainably. And lastly, and I think this is not talked about enough, but maybe this is talked about plenty if you look at ESG reporting, but that should actually be expanded into overall incentivizing a emission reduction pathway like biomethane. Because if you can improve data transparency with systems that allow regional tracking of volumes, emissions, and flows, that will build those kind of data, reliable data, will build investor confidence and will inform better policy decisions as well. So let me close with this. I believe that biomethane is more than a fuel. I believe it's a bridge between today's gas systems and tomorrow's net zero emissions energy mix. It's a bridge between hub models and scale models. And it's a bridge between policy design and actionable and commercial markets. But building that bridge is not a task of one government or one government, one country, or even one company. It's something that we as an ecosystem, so governments, companies, but also civil society, should work together to achieve, because that's what an ecosystem is. I went through this very, very quickly because I want to keep, retain as much time as possible for questions and answers. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful and interesting. Thank you.